you're cool, and you think you know everything about sex.
No. Sports, yes.
All right, give it to me.
It's all the sports knowledge you need.
The Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds.
It's all the hot takes, great guests, and your calls.
It's nonstop sports 24/7.
Ready to deliver the awesome.
The Zone 105.9 and
At The Zone 1059.com.
All right, this is it. We're not just on the back nine this week. I'd probably say we're on 15, okay? So, last hour of the show on the Out of Bounds show on a Football Friday, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. Want to thank all of you for going to our podcast, Apple Podcasts, search the Out of Bounds Show, Spotify and Podbean, search the Out of Bounds Show. You can go back and listen to Steve Robertson or David Johnson, Dave Bartoo, who was on earlier in the week. He'll be on again here at 9:30 on the coaching carousel throughout the Southeastern Conference, and a little bit of Texas and Michigan too, probably. Blakey Blakester with me. I'm your host, Bo Bounds. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for making us your sports and entertainment show of choice. The Mississippi Ag John Deere Tractor text line is 601-885-3776. One of the topics on the show today is during the pandemic, fried chicken has been the most popular fast food of choice in America, according to this study. I'm not sure they really put Chick-fil-A in there. But anyway, KFC ran the show, and then Church's somehow, I don't know how that happened. I would have thought Popeyes would have led the way. So we had a fun discussion with that, the back and forth. Cane's, Zaxby's was on the list, and so on. And then we segued into tomorrow at noon. You have the NFL, 3 games. Talking about binge watching football. And then Sunday, of course, the Saints play the sandwich game, the middle game. But noon all up until, 10, 11 at night, we'll have NFL, which is awesome. Saints play at 3:40 on Sunday afternoon. And they're around a 10-point favorite against the Chicago Bears. And we'll see how that looks. How healthy is Michael Thomas? How healthy is Drew Brees? Got to have both to get to and through the NFC Championship game. But then again, in this league, it's brutal. It's one game at a time. It's a little bit like the SEC. I mean, it is hard to win in the NFL. I can't wait, though, with some of the matchups. Ravens-Titans, who knows which way that game will go. Tampa Bay at Washington. Weather, Washington's defense. We'll see. We'll see what the 40 is. He 43 now? 42, 43-year-old Tom Brady. Now he wants to play. I would think next year would be it for him. But this is Drew Brees' last ride, so black and gold, baby. Who dat? The GOAT, number 9, running out on the field. He talked about how much pain he has endured, Blake, throughout the season. And, hey, the guy wants a shot at the Lombardi one last time, and he either, I guess, needs to end up in Lambeau in the NFC Championship game, or if Green Bay wins in New Orleans for the NFC Championship game. That would be wild. I would not take anything for granted, not even this Chicago Bears game. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's just not a lot of difference separating the teams in the NFL. Buffalo Bills, Bills Mafia, excited again. I ran into a lady who had a Buffalo Bills shirt on at the Y'all Lifestyle shop over Christmas holidays. I couldn't believe it. That was crazy. And she was all excited about Josh Allen. And, of course, there's an Ole Miss Rebel at tight end for the Buffalo Bills, some dude named Knox. And we'll see what else plays out with Buffalo. Also, you've got a game that Saints fans will keep an eye on tomorrow, and that is the Rams at Seattle. So you play if you do what you're supposed to do, you play the winner of the Rams at Seattle. And
yes, I believe that's correct.
Although, maybe that could.
I think it depends on if Tampa loses to Washington. There is some shakeout that could happen.
Right. So it could be if this happens, then this happens. But I think it's still a game that, you'll lock into. Now, Ole Miss fans will watch it because DK Metcalf is the dude. I mean, he's one of the dudes on offense at wide receiver. After missing 15 games out of 36 in his Ole Miss career, which was brutal, he has stayed healthy and emerged as a big-time weapon for one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the game in Russell Wilson. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. We'll have Dave Bartoo coming up. Dave Bartoo at CFB Matrix on Twitter. Bartoo will walk us through what all's going on with the coaching carousel. Zach Arnett, defensive coordinator at Mississippi State, as of maybe 9:06 today, is still the MSU DC. I'll say this. I don't want to take anything away from Zach Arnett. He was one of the highlights of the season. It's just not as cool and fun to talk about defense as it is offense. That's why, like, Ole Miss's offensive unit overshadowed Mississippi State's defensive unit. But Arnett did a magnificent job because they don't have a Willie Gay, Chris Jones, Jeffrey Simmons, Fletcher Cox type talent on that defense. But he was able to piece together a really good unit, opportunistic, did a good job in the red zone and so on. I mean, actually gave MSU a chance to win against Arkansas and Kentucky, and I think they turned the ball over 6 times in both games, 12 times total. And, I mean, we've talked about how many games Ole Miss could have won. Mississippi State could have easily won 3 more games. Arkansas had every opportunity to win, Kentucky and Georgia. So I will say this. Like Ole Miss on offense, Mississippi State, for the most part, has always played good defense. And while you want to keep Arnett, there's other DCs out there that are just as good, if not better. And you're kind of a program that's always going to be able to recruit defensive players in this 3 to 5 state area. And if you're committed to it, you should be pretty darn good at it. So I don't think it would be the end of the world, but he is a good young coach, and you would like to keep him for continuity and so on. And you just bumped him up to $1 million+, and evidently he and his wife love the area, love the weather outside of this time of year, and the quality of life and all that. So it's kind of like Jeff Lebby in Oxford. Lebby wants to be an OC with complete and total autonomy, or a G5 head coach. But that offer has to come along, so he signed a new deal with Ole Miss. He was looking hard because anytime you're a coach, you want the keys to the car. You don't want to ride shotgun. You want to drive. And Arnett gets to drive. He runs the defense. Absolute and total autonomy. We want most of us want that in life, I guess, and in whatever you're doing. And Jeff Lebby rides shotgun, and Lane Kiffin drives the car. So I don't think Lebby will be in Oxford long at all, just because he wants to do the whole thing. I mean, he wants to do the game plan, all the play calling, run the whole show A to Z, fly the plane, no co-pilot. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone is presented by Bank Plus. It's more than a name, it's a promise. And the show is also presented by Superior Foundation for all your foundation repairs. Superior Foundation. Superior Foundation for all your foundation repairs. You know where to go. Lifetime warranty local. Superior Foundation. We may do the Erksleben Award of Excellence coming up next. Interesting. Steve Sarkisian making a run at LSU defensive backs coach Corey Raymond. But not only is he the DB coach, he's their recruiting coordinator. And you know how they recruit. We'll see. And we'll see what happens with Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati that is being courted by LSU for their DC position. Y'all think Ed Ogeron can pull this off? Replace basically 6 assistants and keep this. We know he has elite talent. They're always going to have great players. But can they find a quarterback? Can they get the offense back up and running? And can he replace this many guys and get back into, the college football playoff discussion? Is the question for the LSU Tigers. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Steve Sarkisian at Texas continuing to try to build a strong staff in Austin, Texas. There continue to be rumors that Jim Harbaugh will sign an extension at Michigan. That may be contingent on whether he gets an NFL offer. And then the big news is whether or not Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars will hook up, connect, and Urban will go to the NFL, draft Trevor Lawrence, or as Blake said, but does he draft Justin Fields? Well, I think it's Trevor Lawrence.
Or what about this, Bo? Because we didn't get into this in the 8 o'clock hour when we
Deshaun Watson?
Yes, so I don't know that the Jags would give up the number 1 pick. I think you take Trevor Lawrence on the rookie contract. But if you're number 2 in the Jets, is the number 2 pick worth Justin Fields, or do you pair that with maybe next year's first rounder and you take Deshaun Watson, a proven NFL commodity?
Oh, I'd give up the picks and take Deshaun Watson.
It's the rumor on the street is
I wouldn't
that
even think twice about it.
Yeah, if you're going to get him, it's going to require 2 firsts and
Done.
a rookie contract talent. So someone already on your team that they want that's probably being paid pennies on the dollar.
Done.
I
Yes.
agree. I mean, it's a proven winner.
The guy's an amazing talent.
So if you're Urban, if Urban gets hired at Jacksonville,
Smart.
are you taking
good kid.
Trevor Lawrence or are you trying to get Deshaun Watson?
See. Okay. So I would go Deshaun first, just because I know what I'm getting. Obviously, Trevor could have a great 15-year career, but I would go with Deshaun first, and if I could do that deal, and then I would go with Trevor. Now, other people would argue that if you go with Trevor and he's super, super good and you can expedite the process, that you try to win a Super Bowl in either year 2. You give him a year to get acclimated. In the NFL, you can acquire players in 1 year, flip your roster, and be a Super Bowl team. So if you're good at what you do. That's not easy, but it's doable. That's a great point, Blake. Or do you shoot for trying to win it with him, Trevor Lawrence, year 2 or year 3 on a rookie deal, because so many people say what a challenge it is to win it when you're paying a quarterback $35 to $40 million a year?
Yeah, I mean, look at Seattle as a perfect example. They had to basically sell their entire defense in order to keep Russell Wilson and pay not only Russell, but then you got to pay Tyler Lockett as well. And so it's a tough situation to find yourself in. However, you're talking about in Deshaun Watson, an arguable top 5 quarterback in the league. Certainly looking forward, you would think he's going to be a top 5
Right.
quarterback over the next 5-year period, right?
Yeah, now Louis Riddick, who is a smart dude, calls nonsense on a lot of these people that, again, once we hear something as guys in sports, we take it and run with it and repeat it at lunch and happy hour in the deer stand or deer camp. He's like, look, you can still put together a roster even if you're paying a quarterback a ton of dough. I mean, the Saints have.
Well, the Chiefs have.
The Saints have a really, really – well, that just happened, but let's go with the Saints. The Saints, the last 3 – all right, they have been paying Drew Brees an enormous amount of money for several years now. The last 4 years, the Saints have had Super Bowl talent roster. I mean, the Vikings game, that team was capable of winning the Super Bowl. The Rams game, that team was capable of winning the Super Bowl. So I tend to go – I mean, Lewis is like, if you know what you're doing –
Correct.
I mean, you don't have to pay safeties and running backs and guards and tight ends. So slot receivers, whatever, outside linebackers. Come on. So even if they're going to – they're talking about the salary cap taking a hit. It's at $198 right now, but let's just say $200 million. Let's say it takes a slight hit in 2021. 53 players? I mean, most of these guys – are contributor to – I mean, they just contribute to the wins. You're trying to build a unit, obviously, that, you know, really this thing comes down to QB play and defensive line. I mean, the way that they allow these guys to play starting tomorrow, it gets cold, the weather shifts. I mean, the New York Giants, defensive line, right? And some of these other teams, D-line. That's a great question, Blake. Do you go after Deshaun Watson, who you have to pay big money?
Oh, fat sacks.
But Trevor is talented, but there's still no guarantee that he's going to be great. He could just be good.
Serviceable.
But good can win it. I mean, Jared Goff is, good. Russell Wilson, when he won it, you could argue – was surrounded by he wasn't as elite as he is today.
Oh, not even close. That was a defense team.
Yeah, as far as growing into a quarterback, Eli wasn't an elite quarterback. He was a good QB with a Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame GM, and an amazing defensive line unit. So, see, to me, the Redskins could flip their team in 1 year. They have an elite defensive line. Can they find the QB? Again, if you have edge rushers, disrupt the pocket. So that I don't know what an Urban Meyer does. I would think they were going to go with Trevor. Deshaun Watson, though, not happy. What if he demands? Is he capable of demanding a trade? There's just so few players that can do it. People thought that James Harden was going to be able to do it. He can't. He's a really good player. He's not LeBron James. The only player in the NBA basically that can do that just about is LeBron. I think sometimes we go a little overboard on, the players and their power. Now, Deshaun plays the position, though.
And he has the backing of J.J. Watt, supposedly.
To leave?
Yeah. Yeah, J.J. apparently is furious with ownership and the front office, the way they've handled not only the end of his career, but the beginning of Deshaun Watson's career. And supposedly J.J. Watt is in Deshaun's corner in terms of him being able to do what he wants to do.
Interesting. Well, they paid J.J. Watt too much money, but and he's way past his prime. He's on the 18th hole. But anyway, he's a good guy. It's great. Like Deshaun, he's a great locker room guy, and he's raised a ton of money for the Houston area through natural disasters and so on. But what is he, Blake, 33?
Yeah, I mean, he's on the way out for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dave Bartoo is going to jump in a little Auburn, a little Mississippi State. We'll talk Lebby and Arnett and maybe, what that could look like for them in the future. Derek Mason, defensive coordinator at Auburn. The South Carolina hires. The Ed Ogeron LSU hires. We'll go through all of that. Maybe a little bit of Texas, just see what shakes out there. But Dave Bartoo will join us next on the Coaching Carousel, Coach Effect, and play calling, everything that comes into play. Welcome in on a Football Friday. We'll wrap it up strong with Dave Bartoo, College Football Matrix, on because the Saints are playing this weekend, the Abita Amber and the Parish Cane Break Brewing guest line. The Out of Bounds show is brought to you by the Charbroiled Oysters at Drago's Seafood Restaurant and Oyster Bar.
No one outfits golfers better than Edwin Watts Golf Shops. We've been fitting golfers since 1968. Utilizing cutting-edge fitting technology, we'll analyze your swing and our Foresight launch monitors and fit you with the perfect club, pair of shoes, the latest golf apparel, golf balls, bags, and more. So come by today for your complete custom fitting. Edwin Watts Golf Shops, home of the 90-day 100% satisfaction guarantee.
The Ad Council.
Welcome in. SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Independent Roofing Systems, the number one commercial roofer in Mississippi in the Southeast. So they did the Nissan plant building, Golden Moon Casino, Beau Rivage, Independent Roofing Systems, independent.ms, and they have knocked out jobs all over the state of Mississippi and the Southeast. Independent Roofing, the number one commercial roofer in Mississippi and the Southeast. Independent Roofing. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone. We are streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app, and we welcome in Dave Bartoo at CFB Matrix to talk about the silly season, the coaching carousel, and everything that's going on in college football as far as hires. Bartoo, let's start with Auburn, my man. And Auburn, Brian Harsin, head coach at Auburn, hired Derek Mason, former Vanderbilt coach, as his defensive coordinator. Give me a grade on that.
From a standpoint of available DCs, there was two guys basically on the big board that my colleague and I had for available DCs as best available in the country. One was Don Brown. He's at Arizona. And off subject, I have no idea how the worst recruiter in the Pac-12 ended up with Don Brown, but that's another story. No, I'm serious. I'm like, okay, so the worst recruiter in the Big Ten, Illinois, hired a guy who was 88th in scoring efficiency out of Missouri. And, dude, you left the SEC for Illinois? Where's the fire going on there? There's a third story. But then Don Brown ends up there. But I digress because with Derek Mason, we were kind of going back and forth. So we'll just say it's 1 and 1A in terms of free agent defensive coordinators in terms of hiring risk. So if I'm an Auburn fan, from a potential standpoint, I absolutely couldn't be any happier right now on the defensive side of the football.
Okay, so home run, maybe even grand slam hire for Auburn, DC.
Right. Pump the brakes on it a little bit, right? You know, because I think with all hires, this is how I like to look at it, is you're trying to sandwich the risk, okay? What is the positive risk potential on the upper side? And we've seen with hires, Jim Harbaugh, Scott Frost, Cliff Kingsbury, we've seen the grand slam hires fail. We've seen the hires where you go, how did he come up with Billy Napier? Oh, I love Billy Napier. That was a great hire. You know, so you gotta have an expectation on these hires, and I always like to talk about risk. And when we talk about risk, we talk about that upper side and that downside. The upper side is your potential. How good has this guy been before, if he's coached before? And then on the flip side, you have your downside risk. How bad has he been? Okay. Now, with Derek Mason, he has had elite defenses. At Stanford, he had some wonderful years. On the downside, as a head coach of Vanderbilt, yeah, he's had some bad years, this year being his worst. He also has the worst talent profile in the SEC. So I think on the downside, you got to take a little bit of it with a grain of salt, but there is a little bit of concern there. But the upside potential is so extreme. That's why the gamble, in my opinion, is worth it. For a Derek Mason type of a defensive coordinator.
Love it. Dave Bartoo on the Abita Andy Gator guest line talking silly season and coaching carousel, discussing the coaches moving around. They're all free agents, and just about all of them are willing to move at the drop of a hat. So, Ed Ogeron, he's trying to find the next Joe Brady, which I think is virtually impossible. And so he poaches from Joe Brady's assistants, but they're not necessarily guys that have this long track record as play callers. So how would you grade LSU's hire of the offensive coordinator, Bartoo?
Do they have a track record as recruiters? I mean, what besides being a Joe Brady understudy, what real value are they bringing besides being under Joe Brady? I mean, have they recruited very much? How much college? I'm asking. I do not know right now. How much college experience do these guys have? Not that LSU needs high recruiters because it kind of recruits itself.
Right.
But I think on this hire, this is where I say you give them a no grade. Just calm down about it. Not worry about it. Okay, we don't have a high, we don't have a low. We can't sandwich them in. We don't know what these guys are going to do. Yes, it feels like a Trader Bob Whitsitt kind of thing. And if you're not from the West Coast, Bob Whitsitt was the GM at Seattle SuperSonics in the NBA back in the day, and he miraculously stumbled into a guy named Sean Kemp through trades. And then, boom! All of a sudden, they got this all-star, borderline NBA Hall of Fame level type of talent. And then you watched him search and do the same thing over and over, trying to find that lightning in a bottle, trying to find Sean Kemp again, because that's what he was famous for. And to me, this feels like a situation in which, well, I did it with Joe Brady. I'll just go find me another Joe Brady. And maybe the best place to start is guys that are under Joe Brady, all right? And maybe that works out. What I've read, these guys are young guys, really bright, but look, they haven't called plays. We don't know. Joe Brady happened to work out, okay, with the same kind of resume. Hadn't called plays. Everybody loves him, thinks he has a huge future. Boom, caught lightning in a bottle. But we call it catching lightning in a bottle for a reason, because it doesn't happen very much. So while I'd love to pass judgment on Ed and say this is a bad hire, I've done that in the past to guys that have absolutely nothing on their resume. So I would go forward with it from the standpoint of we'll see what happens in terms of Ed's due diligence, because somehow he got the due diligence right on Joe Brady. So let's see if he can recreate that with these guys. If not, should we be surprised? Absolutely not.
No.
Right.
And you asked the question about the new offensive coordinator, Jake Peets. He's just been an NFL guy. So you asked about the recruiting, although you're right, LSU does recruit. I think
it does, but there. Right, it does, but there's a certain level. But even you can't just roll the football out,
Sure.
And say, hey, our brand is big enough where we don't have to work hard at recruiting. Well, yeah, if you want to stay in the top 20 of recruiting, but getting to the top of the mountain's hard. Staying there is tough. So even though LSU does recruit itself, it still needs to find guys that get out there and pull the kids to campus.
No doubt. Dave Bartoo at CFB Matrix on the Abita Amber guest line. All right, there are rumors that Steve Sarkisian may be able to poach Pete Golding from Alabama after the national championship game. Now, there's a guy on deck that you love in Charlie Strong that's already in the building. So walk me through what you think about Golding. If Golding does go to Texas, what you think about that, and if Saban promoted Charlie Strong from within to D.C.
Well, something. If Golding goes to Texas, it is really kind of a greater indication for me that Golding is probably calling the plays this year. So it's if that's the guy, then that's solid. Certainly, I think from a continuity standpoint, working with Sarkisian, Golding, and Steve having worked together, I think continuity, I think that helps the Texas engines maybe get revved up a little bit quicker. So I don't see really a downside to taking that risk, even though the talent profiles aren't the same. In a few years, if Steve does things right and the boosters do things right, the talent profile won't be that far apart. Charlie Strong, from his career, if you can get Charlie Strong on the upper end of it, like we talked about with Derek Mason, the whole potential of the hire, how good is the top? Charlie Strong has had some super elite years. So to me, if there's one thing you and I and probably everybody's learned is never apply what normally happens to Alabama football, because it's the greatest reload of my lifetime in college football, and so things work out. And this is another example of why Alabama can just be so powerful. Is you got a guy like Charlie Strong sitting there, learning, listening, understanding, acclimated to culture, everything. So I don't think Alabama misses a beat if Charlie's next man up. And for Texas, if you bring in Golding, and that's been the play caller at Alabama for the last 2 years, don't see a lot of downside to making that decision right now either.
All right, let's go to Zach Arnett. There's some rumors swirling. Mississippi State seems to be pretty confident right now. Things could change at any time, all right? But in his first year, considering everything they went through, how would you grade Zach Arnett as a DC? With all conference games and no G5 stuff, no non-conference, and
right, relative talent differential. You start talking about all the guys that were. What's hard to quantify is how many guys they were missing through walk-offs, COVID, whatever. You name it. And I don't have the numbers done yet, but real quick pencil to it in my head. I'd give the grade a B.
Okay.
Is certainly above expectations, above average expectations for the situation. And I talked about, how many guys were coming on your show talking about Arnett in October doing a good job? I don't think anybody saw it. So the fact that people maybe are poking around looking at Arnett, it is 1 year. So let's not get too far ahead of our skis. Sure. It is 1 year. It was a really good year. It was above expectations. It is a bright promise going forward if you can keep him. That's kind of what you're talking about here. Can we keep him if people come knocking? And if people do come knocking, then that's fine. If he walked away, is it so bad where that couldn't be replaced by somebody with equal or better potential down the road? No. Not at all. If he went, I could give you 3 guys that I'd say are as good or better and just as young and just as bright as the future right now. So I think it's easy out, easy in. But if you're a State fan, I think you got to be really happy that this guy has turned out the way he has so far. And I think you got to give a absolute ton of credit to Coach Leach because he made the call on that guy 100%. That's all him. I would not have said, woo, yeah, I can see it, because I couldn't. He certainly did, and I think Leach gets all the credit in the world for where Arnett is right now.
All right, how do you gauge Jeff Lebby? I know you like him, you think he's talented, but the way I framed it up earlier is Lane drives the car and he rides shotgun, whereas with Arnett, Leach doesn't do anything with the defense. He allows his he gives his defensive coordinator complete and total autonomy. So how do you measure Jeff Lebby?
You can't. Honestly, I don't think you can. You can't do it any more than the new guy at LSU, because has he called plays? And yeah, do you want to find a guy that has been part of great offenses and great head coaches and underneath a great coaching tree? Absolutely. But until he's on the front line of that battlefield calling the plays, you really don't know how good he is or he is not. So, if Lebby left right now for any other job as a play caller, as the X's and O's guys, I think it'd have to be the same thing as Pete's at LSU. It's just no grade. Let's just see where this goes. The pedigree says he should be pretty good, but until the bullets start flying, we don't know how to grade a guy like that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. Give us your walk us through your philosophy on hiring the chosen one, the chosen son, like Harbaugh, Scott Frost, those type guys that come back home who were superstar quarterbacks, and the fact that you really can't fire them, and so nobody really knows how to end the relationship if it comes to that.
Well, on something like that, in these situations, no, you can't fire them, really. I mean, Cliff finally got fired at Texas Tech, but I think, was it year 6 of bad? I mean, he'd already run that program right into the dirt as the worst recruiter in the Big 12. With Harbaugh, yeah, it's kind of an AD dream and an AD nightmare, in my opinion, because when you hire a guy like Harbaugh or a Scott Frost, even if it turns out terrible, and I think we'd probably agree what's happened at Nebraska is probably the worst case situation you can imagine for the hype versus the result. Worst case. But from an AD standpoint, you can't be mad at Moose, right? I mean, it's a bulletproof hire. Nobody can get mad because 100% of the people were completely excited about it. So from that standpoint, it's great if you're an AD that gets to do it, because you got 3, 4, 5 years of nobody can blame you for it. But then you get in the situation where, no, you can't fire him because that's terrible. And like with the Michigan situation, I think it's great. They gave him, half his salary to come back? Something like that?
According to reports, yeah.
Now think about this. How long? Why aren't people glorifying this more? Everybody, fans in particular, and tons of these sports writers complain about, oh my God, we're overpaying these guys. Supply and demand. The money's there. It's not my money. I'm not too worried about it. But now we finally get a situation that makes 100% sense. Remember when Gus Malzahn was like, oh, I'm going to go to Arkansas, and the AD didn't go, BS. Knock yourself out. Hit the road. Hit the bricks. Go for it. I'd love to see you take a downgraded program. Now, let's give an extension. This is what Auburn should have done, is what Michigan just did. Well, we love you. We think you're really good, which they are. Jim Harbaugh is really good. Gus Malzahn is really good, okay? But so I think these ADs need to leverage their position better from the standpoint that, look, where are you going for a better job? Where are you going for better pay? Is Jim Harbaugh going somewhere in college for better pay? Nope. So why pay him more money? Why extend him at that level? Same thing with Gus. He wasn't going nowhere. Not at all.
Okay, let me jump in. So
yeah.
Dave Bartoo on the Out of Bounds show. So this has never happened. I mean, if Michigan does this and they take him from $8 million to $5 million, 4 or 5, then really a coach with a good, like you said, he's good, with a good resume, has never, ever taken a 40%, if not more, hit. And now, granted, they've loaded this whole thing up on incentives, so it could just be a PR thing. And heck, if he beats Rutgers, he gets $400,000.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If he beats Illinois,
no,
he gets another $400,000. Okay, but either way, it looks good in the paper and on the .coms. But if we think about it, Bartoo, can we think of another example where this has ever happened in college football, where a guy who's been successful takes a 40% hit?
No. Who takes that haircut? And maybe that's because he is an alumni. Maybe because he is Jim Harbaugh and the connectivity to Michigan. And maybe it's a huge anomaly. It's a one-off thing that we're not going to see again for another decade. But I think it is an example for athletic directors, depending on the situation, to be able to look at it and go, should I be afraid of this guy walking away? Okay, now if I'm the Michigan AD, I shouldn't be afraid of that because I have the power and money to go get a guy that has as good or better risk than Jim Harbaugh, But I don't mind that he stays because Jim's done a good job.
Sure.
Recruiting's up. The results aren't there what everybody wanted, but everybody wanted 12-0 and beat Ohio State every year. And Michigan is one of those programs that I lump in there with Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee. They have won national title in 40 years. They're the second to third best recruiter almost always in their conference. They really never have gotten over the hill. Bo Schembechler, massively overrated. I say Lloyd Carr's better head coach than him, just from a result standpoint and the difficulty of it. So, with Michigan, it's one of those brands that everybody nationwide expects everything, and then when they don't deliver it, they think they've underperformed, when actually I think they've done pretty good. Not great, but pretty darn good. So I think this Michigan situation is just something that we can't close the doors on and say this is how we should do it, but I think it's an example as we learn more about the contract going forward about certain situations and AD's approach to it.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it there. We'll have to do this again next week because who knows what will happen over the weekend as far as the coaching carousel.
Always changing, buddy. Always changing, right?
Dave Bartoo at CFB Matrix on the Abita Amber guest line. Bartoo, have a great weekend, buddy. Thank you, man.
Peace, bro.
See you, dude. Dave Bartoo on the Out of Bounds show. That was fun. Little Auburn, MSU, Ole Miss, Texas, and in Michigan. Hey, Blake, I just saw this. This is interesting. Evidently, Dan Patrick mentioned that Georgia could be in trouble too. I wish I had more time. I've only got 3 minutes. I'm going to say this. If Georgia stubbed their toe in recruiting to the point where they'll be investigated too, first of all, this blows my mind because I can't believe Tennessee did it because they don't have anybody in their state to turn them in. I understand why Bama, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss lead the way in probations the last 40 years. Small state, proximity, fighting for real estate, right? LSU, to me, they've gotten sloppy. And God knows the sexual misconduct allegations. I mean, it's bad down there. But if Tennessee they're in trouble, and I don't know if they're going to be able to get this Eric Gray stuff under control, much less some of the other things that are going on. So they may have a play to get rid of Jeremy Pruitt with cause. If it's true that Georgia took too many risks, I'll tell you, and we'll discuss this more either over the weekend or on Monday. Here's where I'm going with this. When you're chasing Saban, see Ole Miss, you get sloppy and you take too many risks. Because of the monster in Tuscaloosa, it drives other programs to lose their mind and take too many risks. Everybody is taking a risk in college football recruiting. There is money, going here and there and under the table and in the back room and third-party flesh peddlers and uncles getting involved and dads who don't have anything to do with the family until the last few weeks of recruiting. And there are certain teams who prey on that even more. But if it's true that Georgia got sloppy in recruiting and could open themselves up to an investigation, and by the way, their athletic director who hired Kirby Smart just retired, and Josh Brooks just took over at Georgia. Yes, Josh Brooks, who was just the Millsaps athletic director just a few years ago, and a good guy. But Kirby's not. I mean, this is insane. But what happens here is in the race to get Bama, do you take too many risks to get there? We'll discuss on Monday. We'll see what happens. Hey, y'all, enjoy football. Have a great weekend. Enjoy some hoops, too. Cook the rotel and red beans and rice. Send us pictures on social media. And we hope you have a great weekend. The show is powered by Independent Roofing, the #1 commercial roofer in Mississippi. Independent Roofing Systems. Thanks for listening to the Out of Bounds Show. For Blake, I'm your host, Bo Bounds. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.
Hey, Lucky Buck here, and if you're like me, you love spreading the cheer this time of year. It makes my nose glow. You should see it. Luckily, the Mississippi Lottery has lots of ways to spread the cheer, like scratch-offs, Powerball, Cash 3, Mega Millions. They're perfect for friends, family, even complete strangers, over age 21, of course. I've even seen a simple scratch-off turn a cheerless Scrooge into a cheerful dude.
Wow, thanks.
Have fun, y'all.
Must be 21 or over to play. Gambling problem? Call 888-777-9696.